Oh, I remember the crossing. It was very, very rough. They say the worst possible time to cross the Atlantic is in December, especially if you're coming from the North Sea. It was so rough the very first day out, they would not allow us up on deck. We had to be down below, and you'd be looking through the porthole, and all you'd see would be water. And then suddenly up the ship would go, and you'd be looking through the porthole, and all you'd see would be blue sky. And you'd be trembling there on the crest of the wave, fearing that the ship was going to break in half. What I did was I looked at memoirs, I looked at letters, journals. I even got a whole packet of stuff from Ellis Island National Monument, which were interviews with immigrants. And I took the good ones, and I settled on 7 characters, and I watched them cross the Atlantic. The first scene is what it was like to cross the Atlantic 100 years ago, no picnic. And then I look at the different problems they encountered at the door, as they say. They called Ellis Island the door, the gateway to freedom. So they're all true stories. They are all real people. Millions of people were coming at the turn of the last century, what we have to call the last century now. And so they say that 40% of us now living have ancestors who went through Ellis Island. That's a tremendous, that's almost half of us have a personal Ellis Island connection. So it shows you how many millions were coming, and it also gives a lot of people, a reference point. Well, these stories may be like my ancestors. So I hope that, it's been said over and over that history often is taught as wars and dates and rulers and politicians, and I think that's important. I'm a person who believes that information is a very important part of your education. However, I think that we sometimes forget the social history side, the personal stories, and I think it's through those personal stories, through those memories, that people can really connect with history. Otherwise, it just seems removed from us. But when you hear stories from real people, I think it helps everyone, students, adults, anyone, to get a new take on history. People have pointed out that history is spelled H-I, story, and that's what it is. History is story. So some people call me a storyteller. I think I'm a little theatrical for that, but I do want people to just get a new take on what history's made up of. It's made up of you and me, and in 50 years, it will definitely be made up of you and me. So. Oh, he's expecting us. Oh, you needn't worry, I'm sure he will. No job is waiting for us. Yeah, I'd like to go back to school. The diploma's, well, thank you very much. No, not married, feel a bit young for that yet. No, we've not been to prison, indeed not. Ill? No, a bit hungry now and then, sir, but never ill. Well, I had a theater background. I was raised on the West Coast, and I lived in San Francisco, and so I had a theater and television background there and worked quite a bit. And then when my husband was offered a job at the University of Nebraska, he teaches at the law school, and when we first arrived, I got busy having babies and things like that, but as I realized that we were probably staying, as I told you, I thought the only way that you can probably have a theatrical career, if you want to be full-time, is to work alone. And so I developed, my first show that I developed was about the orphan train, and I do that one quite a bit. I thought, what would people here be interested in? And I'd only heard of the orphan train fleetingly. On the West Coast, nobody knows about the orphan train. But when I got to Nebraska, I heard it mentioned a couple of times. And so that was the first one I developed. Then I developed this one, and now I have a number of other programs also.